Hello everybody, welcome back. This is Emma here in my new little corner, my little creative corner here that I've made for myself. Welcome back. If it's your first time here, a very warm welcome and thank you for finding me. Thanks for all the lovely comments last week on my sort of studio clear out video. I'm kind of moving my way into finding myself in this new space. It's been a very odd week, I'll be honest with you. Obviously I was back into editing, so that was really nice. I love editing my films. I love trying to put them together so that they're nice for you. And then I was suddenly faced with, oh my goodness, I've got to make another film now. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I thought, well, I'm going to faff about a bit more in my little space. I've realised that I didn't feel at all creative. And obviously it's a bit like, it's a bit like drawing on a blank sheet of paper, isn't it? Or being somewhere so new, so clean, so fresh. And it's not. This is basically a corner of my lounge, okay? But I'm trying to keep my corner, the messy corner, if you like, in one area and keep the rest sort of nice and calm for sitting in and reading books and watching telly and stuff. Until I get into my proper room. I have got another room that I'm going to be in at some point, and that's going to be my space, but at the moment it's a bit half and half. And I realised I brought some things into this space, but mostly it was a little bit sterile. Although I have my, I've got my fabrics, I've got some threads, I didn't have any mess in it. I didn't have any creative toot everywhere. And I've realised that to be creative, I need stuff around me. I need little bits of fiddly bits, little pots with things in that I don't really know what they're for. They don't have a purpose necessarily, but also it was about familiarity. I wasn't being familiar, even though this is my house and this is where I live and this is a room I come into every day. It wasn't familiar for me as a creative space, and I was feeling a bit sort of anxious, if you like, about actually sitting in here, making a mess, filming, getting creative. Whereas in my old space, that was my home. That was like, I could breathe in there, I could be myself in there, I could express everything that I needed to express in there quite freely. So it's a very odd thing, isn't it? It's been having change, being sort of uprooted from somewhere, and it's a really interesting psychological effect that's been going on this week. So what I've done is I've gone down back to my creative space that I had before, my old space, and a lot of the stuff that I had in piles ready to get sorted out, I've actually just brought up here, lock, stock and barrel, in a little messy pile, because I just thought I need some mess. I really need some mess. And I'm sure those of you who are creative, many of you are, I know, you will identify with this. Too clean, too smart, too don't touch. So, because I've got new furniture in here as well. I've got a lovely new table, I've got a new cupboard, I've got new shelves behind me, I've got other new cupboards. To be honest, the woodworm ate quite a few of my old cupboards. So I've got these lovely new metal locker type cupboards, and they're wonderful, but they are quite, they're a little bit off-putting because they are kind of very clean and pristine and no knocks on them, no sort of scuffs and scrapes like the wooden ones had. So what I thought I'd do today is I'm just going to get a box of fabrics out. I'll just show you what I've got down here. This is a box, and I was going through it thinking, it's like all my offcuts from many projects from many years ago, probably from the very first, some of the very first things I was making when I finished sort of working properly and started being an artist. If you like. So this is a box of like my offcuts of fabrics. It's just all my creams and my whites, and I used to make a lot of stuff on calico when I first set out. I was very cautious with colour, I didn't use a lot of colour, and I thought, well, maybe I will just go back to basics. Instead of sort of getting rid of this box and handing it over to somebody else to use, maybe I will just revisit this box. It's an old friend, it's familiar, it's not scary, and out of this box I'll see what I can do. And that's what I'm going to do. So let's see what I feel like doing with this. I'm just going to play around and see what happens. Okay, so this is me about to get creative in my new space. So what are we going to do to start with? How am I going to get this show on the road, as they say? And I think what I'm going to do is I've got this little pile of bits and bobs here. I'm just found these were old samples that I've done many years ago, creating sort of textures using calico and bits of fabric and bits of yarn and some stitching. So they're all a little bit different, And I don't think I could begin to tell you how I made some of them. They're quite random. That's organza onto some curtain interlining, I think. But what I love about them is they're all quite textured, and I'm liking the lines on something like that. If I'm thinking seed heads, which is what I am kind of working into a bit here, I think, that's got some potential. Oops, there's a bit of a thread. That's quite nice. That's got some, that's got on the top of there all sorts of weird things. I might even have put a plastic bag on the top of that, some layers. That's just calico with stitching on. This again is some curtain interlining, and it's got lots of different things put on there. And I think what I've done is I've put Bondaweb on top. Looking at the edge of that, I think this has got all sorts of bits of meshy things and yarns onto the cotton curtain interlining and Bondaweb. Well, there you go. This has got one of those fabrics that shrinks when you heat it, so that's just a bit of organza. That's a bit of curtain interlining with a bit of circular stitching done on it. So I do love texture. I don't know about you, but I really do love texture. It's got to be texture as well as colour for me. This has got lots of bits of lace, I think, that I've just sort of put on top of each other and then kind of slashed a bit, stitched a little bit. You can see a little bit of stitching on the back there, but mostly it's got some slashing. I quite like that with the sort of the colours coming through. This again is some layers with lace and scrim and bits of threads onto a piece of calico. Again, you can see it's just stitched very loosely. And then I put a piece of this white sort of organza-y fabric here, and then I've just sort of burnt it away with a heat gun. That's not really what I'm looking for. This is a funny bit. This is just some rough fabric that I've stitched down. I've done some of it with I don't know whether I think I've cut it into strips first and then stitched it down. I think that's probably what I've done. Again, just a bit of simple stitching on the back. It was all about creating texture, different ways of creating texture. This is just string. I had this really nice string that's kind of got a really nice loose twist to it, if you like, and then I've done some zigzag stitching on it. So there's so many different ways you can create texture, and as I say, it's all about the texture for me. It's texture. If it's not texture, I'm not interested. This is a bit of stabilizer, so that's quite stiff. If you can hear that, that's quite stiff. And just different kinds of stitching put on there. There's some cotton curtain interlining. It's kind of got a quilted effect, but I've done a bit of string on there as well and a bit of zigzag. Just been messing about. I think you can't be just getting bits of fabric out and doing a bit of messing about, because that can lead you to things, to different sorts of things. So I quite like that one. And then I found this one, right? This has got a piece of calico. I'll just see if we can see the stitching on it. It's kind of got just lines of stitching, some of it zigzag. But what I've done on the other side is I've put little scraps of scrim and lace. And if you can see, there's a tiny little bit of yarn there. And then I put some soluble paper on top, and I've dissolved it away after I've stitched it. So I quite like that as a way of creating a sort of a textured background with a linear quality. It's got this sort of, both of these I like because they've got these lines sort of going up, and I'm thinking sort of seed heady, that might be quite nice. So let's put those to one side. And what I've got here is, here's something I made earlier. I've got this rough piece of, sorry, that's a loud noise, isn't it? Just a minute. I've got my scissors in a different box to how I had them. They used to be on another table, and it's all a bit uncertain here. I'm lucky if I can find anything, to be honest. I've been hunting high and low for a particular sketchbook this afternoon. Been driving me mad. So not only am I not in my familiar space and I'm in a new place, but I really don't know where anything is, because I'm not fully and completely sort of in my new space. So I can't just bring everything together in one room. I've got it in about 3 different rooms. So and I'm learning to film in a different place, in a different situation, with different light. It's all up for grabs, guys, so please forgive if it goes a bit pear-shaped. I'm just doing the best I can. So that's kind of a roughish piece. This is cotton curtain interlining, which, as many of you who've been watching for a while will know, it's one of my favourite pieces of fabric to use. And I'm just thinking to, you know, I don't think I'm even going to bother straightening that up. We're going to just have it as it is. So it's very blank. It's very much just a blank canvas. And I'm going to choose some sort of fabrics and yarns and things to pop on top, and then we'll see where that's going to take us. This is quite an adventure because I don't know where it's going. I haven't used soluble paper for absolutely ages, and it can be really good fun. It can have really nice effects. You could, of course, I could be taking little pieces like this and making myself a little sample to see if I like it, but I just thought, well, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to play and see and feel and let it evolve. Okay, so I've got sort of these two as my reference pieces. I'll just pop those up there. Perhaps pull this down a little bit. And basically, I'm just going to play around and see what I fancy using to put down on this sort of base layer and just see where it takes me. It could go absolutely anywhere, this, honestly. There's no knowing where this adventure is going to take us, ladies and gentlemen. I guarantee no outcomes. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? I used to have quite a lot of this. I think it's Wensleydale fleece stuff, and it's just the most fantastic, fun stuff. This is quite a random collection. I rather like those together like that. You could just sort of embellish those down and it would be done. Look at that. So I've got those to go at. This is lovely. This is a yarn that I bought a very long time ago, like most things. Been in my stash. It's been used for many things down the years. I just love it. I love the colour of it, and I love the crazy sort of loopiness of it. You can see that. That's just lush, isn't it? I've got a lovely bit of something rather special here. This is from the local sheep, which are called Herdwick sheep. This is very much Lake District, and if I was to let you smell this, just have a smell of that. Anybody who's ever smelled a Herdwick sheep or Herdwick wool, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about because it's full of lanolin. It's if it's unwashed, I think this is just the most luscious stuff. It's real sheepy wool, and it's quite rough, but it's just got gorgeous colours and textures to it. And as I say, it's got the smell. I once made a jumper in this, and it was from an unwashed cone of stuff, so it still had the lanolin in, and it was the most wonderful jumper for going hill walking in because it was slightly waterproof. Not waterproof, but it would repel the water because of all the lanolin in the wool. So the other things I've got here, I've just collected a little collection of bits and bobs, as I've got some lacy bits and things, and I thought this might be quite fun, kind of cut up going upwards, so we'd get some of the horizontal lines, if you like, on it. So there's that, just bits of lace just to add a bit of texture to the background. I've got some of this, which is a lovely fun piece of lace, which again, it's got some nice sort of linear qualities. We could be adding that in, going upwards like that, you see. Okay, and then I was thinking, well, actually, do I want to add some colour in? I have obviously just found that, which is kind of that sort of effect there, but I've also, if I wanted to add some more colours in, this is something rather yummy probably from Woolfest, or is it from, oh, it's Ellie Langley. Now, if anybody knows Ellie Langley, she's in the middle of Northumberland and Cumbria. She's like I think she's Northumberland, right in the middle of nowhere. And she makes wonderful felt. So this is from her fleece, from her sheep, from Jacobs. It says curls from Stephanie, Jacob, and Teeswater from Ellie's flock. And she's just wonderful. So there's those. See, it's changing already. It could become just this incredible textured piece, you know, just made for fun. I'm not sure whether we'll even end up with seed heads, but it doesn't really matter. The important thing is I'm getting creative, I'm getting over my fears, I'm finding my stash, I'm settling into a space that was a little bit weird to start with, and I'm sort of finding ways to make this work for me. So the other thing I've got here, which might or might not be of use, but I really love the colour. This is very much the colour of dock seeds, don't you think? It's got that sort of gorgeous brown, the seeds of docks and sorrel. And if you untwizzle it a little bit like that, you know, it could just be adding colour, because it doesn't have to be seed heads as such. It could just be simply the effect of the layering of the seed heads and the lines and the shapes and the colours and the textures. One just doesn't know how it's all going to turn out. Again, this is a gorgeous yarn. I'm not sure where I got it from. It's very soft. It might even be silk, but it's the most luscious colour, you know, with these things. I feel as though we're getting some real lovely sort of autumny vibes going on, and I have to say today it's quite autumnal outside, although there's still some summer flowers in the garden. The wind's been blowing as though it's trying to stir up an autumn storm or something. So I'm just rustling this off camera a second while I just try and find, here we go. I've got more bits and bobs in here, but I think we'll just start with, because I've got some of that out already, I think we'll just make a start with what we've got, to be honest, because I think you can end up with too much. You can end up with too much, can't you? And then it becomes too sort of mind-boggling. The other thing I've got is this lovely textured fabric, which is very old. I think it came from my grandmother's stash of fabric that I sort of inherited. And if you cut it up into strips and stitch it down, it gives you a really nice sort of textured effect. You lose the sense that it's a woven cloth because you just cut it into lines. If I show you, let's cut a little bit. And you just end up with this lovely sort of texture. And it's sort of slightly, you know, you can slightly disintegrate it a little bit if you want to mess around with it a bit. You know, oh, you can even break it in half if you really want to. Which you could have, it doesn't have to be a whole complete piece, does it? It could be a hint of something. So I think I'm just going to get playing with this now and see where that's going to take us.